Have you ever wondered what happens when divine desire meets divine protection? In the ancient world of Greek mythology, even gods weren't immune to rejection, and sometimes the most powerful forces in nature were born from acts of defiance. In ancient Greece, every river, every spring, every natural wonder had a story. The Greeks believed that divine beings inhabited every corner of their world, from the highest mountain peaks to the deepest ocean depths. Among these divine inhabitants were the river gods, powerful deities who controlled the flow of life-giving water, and the nymphs, beautiful nature spirits who embodied the wild, untamed essence of the natural world. Our story takes us to the Peloponnese, where the mighty river Alpheus carved its path through the landscape. This wasn't just any river. Alpheus was a god, son of the titans Oceanus and Tethys, commanding respect and fear throughout the region. His waters nourished crops, sustained cities, and shaped the very geography of ancient Greece. But like many male deities in Greek mythology, Alpheus possessed a fatal flaw that would lead to an extraordinary transformation. Far to the west, on the island of Sicily, lived Arethusa, a hunting nymph devoted to the virgin goddess Artemis. Picture her, graceful, swift, and fiercely independent, moving through ancient forests with the confidence of someone who belonged entirely to the wild. Arethusa had pledged herself to Artemis, goddess of the hunt, the moon, and protector of young women. This meant embracing a life of eternal chastity, freedom from male pursuit, and dedication to the natural world. Arethusa spent her days hunting in the dense Sicilian forests, her silver arrows never missing their mark. She was everything a nymph should be: beautiful, elusive, and completely at one with nature. Her devotion to Artemis wasn't just religious obligation, it was a choice that gave her power, independence, and protection in a world where female autonomy was rare and precious. But fate, as it often does in Greek mythology, had other plans. One scorching summer day, after a particularly successful hunt, Arethusa felt the overwhelming need to cool herself. She'd been tracking deer through the Sicilian wilderness for hours, her body heated from exertion and the Mediterranean sun. In the distance, she heard the gentle murmur of flowing water. Following the sound, she discovered a crystal-clear stream, its waters so pure and inviting that they seemed to call to her. Without hesitation, Arethusa shed her hunting garments and slipped into the cool, refreshing waters. The stream felt perfect against her skin, washing away the dust and sweat of the hunt. She floated peacefully, completely unaware that these weren't ordinary waters. This stream was connected to something far more dangerous than she could have imagined. Beneath the surface, the river god Alpheus felt her presence immediately. Her beauty, her grace, her very essence stirred something deep within his divine consciousness. In that moment, Alpheus became consumed with desire so intense it would drive him to abandon all reason and respect. As Arethusa prepared to leave the water, she heard a voice calling to her, deep and resonant, like the sound of rushing rapids. Alpheus revealed himself, rising from the stream in his divine form, declaring his love and demanding that she become his bride. His words weren't a request or a courtship. They were the commands of a god accustomed to taking whatever he desired. Arethusa's response was immediate and absolute: rejection. She had pledged herself to Artemis, she declared. She would never abandon her vows of chastity for any male, mortal, or divine. Her loyalty belonged to the hunt, to the wild places, to her goddess. Alpheus could offer her rivers and streams, dominion over waters throughout Greece, but she wanted none of it. Alpheus's desire transformed into rage, then into obsession. If she wouldn't come willingly, he would take her by force. The ancient Greeks understood this pattern all too well. Their myths were filled with male gods who couldn't accept rejection, who believed their divine status gave them the right to pursue and possess any woman they desired. The chase began. Arethusa ran with the speed and grace that only a nymph could possess, her feet barely touching the ground as she fled through the Sicilian countryside. Behind her, Alpheus pursued in his river form, his waters flowing impossibly fast, defying natural laws as he surged across land that should have stopped any normal stream. The pursuit was relentless and terrifying. Alpheus could travel through any waterway, appear in any stream or spring, making escape seem impossible. Arethusa ran for days, her strength sustained only by her desperate need for freedom and her faith in Artemis. She crossed mountains, valleys, and forests, but always she could hear the sound of rushing water behind her, getting closer. Alpheus wasn't just chasing her physically. As a river god, he had power over all waters, and he used this divine authority to cut off her escape routes. Springs dried up before she could drink. Streams changed course to block her path. The very element that should have given her life was being turned against her. Arethusa's situation grew more desperate with each passing hour. Her strength was failing, her hope diminishing. Alpheus was gaining ground, his waters now so close she could feel the spray on her back. In her darkest moment, with capture seeming inevitable, she did the only thing left to her. She called upon Artemis. The cry that rose from Arethusa's lips wasn't just a prayer. It was the desperate plea of a faithful devotee who had kept her vows, even in the face of divine persecution. It was the call of a woman whose autonomy was being stripped away by male entitlement. It was a sound that pierced the very heavens. Artemis heard. The virgin goddess, protector of women, guardian of the wild, and enemy of male aggression, responded with swift and decisive action. Just as Alpheus's waters were about to engulf Arethusa, Artemis wrapped her faithful nymph in a thick, concealing cloud. But the goddess knew that hiding wouldn't be enough. Alpheus would wait, search, persist until he found his prize. The only way to truly save Arethusa was through transformation, a change so complete that even a river god couldn't claim her. Within the protective cloud, Artemis began the sacred process of metamorphosis. Arethusa felt her body changing, her essence shifting from flesh to something far more fundamental. Her fear dissolved into acceptance, her desperation into peace. She was becoming something eternal, something that could never be possessed or controlled. Arethusa was transforming into a freshwater spring. But Artemis's protection went even further. She split the earth beneath the spring, creating a passage that would carry Arethusa's waters far from Sicily, far from Alpheus's reach. The spring would travel underground, beneath the Mediterranean Sea itself, emerging, finally, in Greece, near the sacred island of Ortygia in Syracuse. When the cloud lifted, Alpheus found only a bubbling spring where Arethusa had stood. He could sense her essence in the water, could feel her presence. But she was forever changed. Forever beyond his grasp. His pursuit had failed, his desire thwarted by divine justice. Yet some versions of the myth suggest that Alpheus's obsession didn't end there. Driven by his unrelenting desire, he too underwent transformation, mingling his river waters with her spring waters in the harbor of Syracuse. But even if their waters mixed, Arethusa had achieved something precious. She had maintained her identity, her independence, and her sacred vows. This ancient tale resonates through the centuries because it addresses timeless themes that remain relevant today. The story of Arethusa and Alpheus isn't just about gods and nymphs. It's about consent, about the right to say no, about the protection of the vulnerable against those who would abuse their power. In ancient Greek culture, women's autonomy was severely limited, making Arethusa's story particularly powerful. Here was a female character who refused to submit to male authority, even divine male authority, and who found protection through her devotion to a female deity. Artemis represents the fierce protective instinct that defends women's right to choose their own paths. The transformation itself carries deep symbolic meaning. Springs were sacred in ancient Greece, sources of life and purity that were often associated with divine presence. By becoming a spring, Arethusa achieved immortality while maintaining her essential nature. She became something that could nourish and sustain life while remaining forever untouchable. This myth has inspired countless artists, writers, and poets throughout history. From ancient Greek pottery to Renaissance paintings to modern literature, the story of Arethusa continues to captivate audiences. Percy Bysshe Shelley wrote a poem about her transformation. Artists have depicted her flight and metamorphosis in sculptures and paintings that capture both her terror and her ultimate triumph. The geographical element of the story also held special significance for ancient Greeks. The real spring of Arethusa in Syracuse was considered sacred, a place where the divine touched the mortal world. Visitors would come to see the spring where, according to legend, the transformed nymph still flowed, carrying her story in every drop of sacred water. In our modern world, the myth of Arethusa speaks to ongoing struggles for bodily autonomy and the right to reject unwanted advances. Her story reminds us that sometimes transformation, even painful transformation, can be the path to freedom. It celebrates the power of divine feminine protection and the importance of honoring those who choose independence over submission. The tale of Alpheus and Arethusa ultimately teaches us that true love cannot be forced, that desire without consent becomes violence, and that sometimes the most powerful response to pursuit is complete transformation. In becoming a spring, Arethusa didn't just escape Alpheus. She became something eternal, something that would continue to flow and nourish long after the gods themselves were forgotten. This ancient story continues to flow through our collective consciousness, like the sacred spring itself, carrying its message of resistance, transformation, and the enduring power of those who refuse to be possessed.